What's going on, Wolfpack? Welcome back. Welcome back. Or Nick would say, welcome bike. Welcome back to another episode of Market Watch Mondays. Hopefully one of your favorite episodes to tune into on the channel. Got a couple things to go through today. It's going to be exciting. I just got back yesterday from Sacramento, moving out there later on this year. So I was checking out some housing and stuff. They actually got some pretty dope luxury apartments out there. So it was pretty nice checking those out. I also I'm kind of ready to move out of the city a little bit. I've been living in San Francisco now for about, 4 or 5 years. I'm not fully ready to move to the burbs yet because I'm not like in Boomerville as of right now in my life, but I am kind of ready to move out into like that midtown-ish vibe. So I've been checking a couple places out there. So I'm going to see what happens. So excited about that. And, I'm sure a lot of you guys have been going through rookie drafts since last week's episode. Hopefully, you've been able to implement some of the strategies that I talked about. I know people on the Patreon have started posting their drafts and posting their strategies of trading back, and it's been very fruitful for them. So hopefully, it's been working for you guys out there as well. I want to talk about a couple things today. A couple of the things that Patreon members brought up was, one, they wanted to see like what some of my teams actually turn into, because the one I gave out last time was obviously like still very pick heavy, right? You couldn't really envision a winning team yet because all I had was a lot of picks, and I completely understand that. So I want to show you a couple of examples of teams that I've turned around on shorter time periods, and why I basically said to focus on 2023 as a class, and those things were kind of tied together. And then I also want to talk about shout out to Forshad in the Wolfpack Patreon, one of the most active members in there, but he wanted me to talk about QB valuation this year and just basically relative positional value within startup drafts and how that's changed from year to year. So I will definitely cover that as well. Before we get to that, you guys know by now what time it is. Hit that intro. All right, so let's kick it off. So first of all, if I'm looking at a lot of my startup drafts in the past, the reason why I want to show that strategy in the last week's episode, for those of you guys that haven't seen it, it was basically a rookie draft that I did where I like traded back and it comboed in. It basically tracked like a startup productive struggle that I started last year, and which I intend to complete either by next year or the year after that into a very, very dominant dynasty team. And the reason why I do it is because of that reason, right? You can go a lot more heavier in year one, right? But one, it kind of like limits your flexibility if you don't have the rookie draft picks, so you don't get to capitalize on the value. But two, is not necessarily the most success I've had building true dynasties, like dominant teams year after year after year after year. So I want to show you, I'll just kind of like list out some of the teams that I do have that were 1 year turnaround. And 2019 was one of the best years to do a productive struggle, which is why I did a bunch of them in that year, because I saw the 2020 class. And as I said before, the 2020 class had a bunch of stud running backs, right? And that's the type of profile rookie class that you want to target in your like productive struggle rebuilds. You want to load up on rookies in that class, which is why I said last week I want to load it up on 2023 class and target that as my absolute like immediate turnaround year, and to turn that team around into a dominant dynasty roster. So I did a lot of that within 2019, and let me show you what some of those teams look like now. I guess not show you, but read you. So in 2019, I did one productive struggle. This is a 12-team super flex draft, tight end premium, but you don't have to start a tight end. You could start a wide receiver or tight end. So in those times, I literally don't really care about tight ends at all, unless you get like a Kelsey or Kittle. Which I did not get in that draft. I felt like people were overvaluing it a little bit. And then this is also a 0.25 points per carry. So in this league, in the startup draft, I did a productive struggle where I basically traded out of the first round and the second round, and then I accumulated a bunch of picks in the middle rounds. And then I also accumulated a bunch of rookie picks throughout the year and within the year by trading out of my running back. So like similar to the last one, I drafted a bunch of veterans. I remember I drafted like Chris Carson. I drafted Marlon Mack. I drafted Aaron Jones. I drafted a lot of those guys. I traded out a lot of them to get rookie picks, and I had about 4 or 5 rookie picks heading into the 2020 draft. I did an immediate turnaround in that 1 year, and in the startup draft, the only thing I drafted were quarterbacks, wide receivers that I thought were a good value that I could build around going forward. And I made a ton of trades now in that league because of the flexibility I had in the rookie drafts. But let me tell you what the team looks like now. And this team, again, it was a 1 year turnaround, so in 2020. And within that 1 year, I won the championship. So I went from like bottom 2 team to basically the top team. And I think I'm going to have a really good shot of winning again because I'll redraw my roster right now. But I have Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson as my starting quarterbacks. Unfortunately, I don't have a third quarterback, so I traded away Jalen Hurts. But here's my running backs. I have Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins. I used to have Aaron Jones and Chris Carson, but like I said, I traded them away for some of the other players that you see coming up. And then I also have James Robinson on the bench. And then for wide receivers, I have A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, Will Fuller, Cortland Sutton, and Marquise Brown. So, I mean, if you look at those wide receivers based on ADP and based on my own ranks, like I basically have 4 or 5 of the top 12 wide receivers, right? So my team, and they're all young for the most part, and a lot of them haven't even hit their prime. Guys like A.J. Brown, guys like Justin Jefferson, guys like DJ Moore, they're still developing into prime assets. So that type of team is going to be very dominant for a long time because my wide receivers are basically there to stay. My running backs are still young, but they're also studs. So, and then I have good quarterbacks. So in that type of format, like I'm struggling with like seeing how a team can like really beat me like consecutively. Now, like obviously teams can get lucky and beat me out in any given week because that's just how fantasy is played. But over the long run, the expected value on that team is very, very high. So. And I was only able to do that because I punted year one and played on that delayed gratification concept that I talked about last year, right? And let me just give you another example, right? So this is another league where I did not draft a single running back in the startup until the 14th round, and I think I drafted like Matt Breida or something. And this was in 2019. Remember when Matt Breida was like in San Francisco, and there was some hype around him, and I drafted him because he was the best player available. But for the most part, I drafted only wide receivers, and I drafted quarterbacks. So I had like Lamar Jackson, and this was in 2019 before Lamar Jackson blew up as an MVP candidate, and I was getting him in like the 3rd round of every single draft. So similarly in this draft, I can show you what happened within that 1 year turnaround, but I could basically control the 2020 rookie draft. I had about 5 picks. I had 3 of the top 5 rookie picks in 2020. So I used that to control the draft and trade into veterans. So remember, I had no running backs going into that year, right? And then within one season, I added Joe Mixon by trading rookie picks. I added Alvin Kamara by trading rookie picks, and I added Jonathan Taylor and Clyde Edwards-Helaire to my team. Within that 1 year, and I became an immediate contender. And in that league, I finished like 3rd place or something. And the only reason why is because we didn't reseed for playoffs. So I was one of the top seeds going to the playoffs. But what ended up happening was the 2 top teams ended up facing each other because we're in the same division, I think it was. Really, really stupid setup. I'm glad we're changing it this year because if we had done the reseeding, I would have won the championship in that league as well. So the guy that won was just lucky that I got knocked off first round by going top scorer versus second top scorer in the first week. But here's my team. All right, I have Lamar Jackson. Again, this is 12 team Superflex, 0.5 PPR. Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert. Those are my QBs. I drafted Justin Herbert, I think at like 1.11 because, as you guys remember, even myself, I was super low on Justin Herbert. Everyone was, but when you get that type of draft capital, you cannot just allow a quarterback to follow the first round. So it was just not a draft for me once I got to my pick there. I actually traded out of like 1.06 to get to 1.11 and then added like Mark Andrews on top as a tight end. So I basically traded like DeAndre Swift for Justin Herbert plus like Mark Andrews, and I gave back like Irv Smith or something like that. So again, let's look at this team. Those are my quarterbacks. My running backs: Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, and then I traded for Austin Eckler last offseason. This team has no first-round picks. The last team that I quoted you still has a 1.09, and we're drafting on Monday. I have a 1.09 and I have a 2.01, so I'm going to reload that team. So imagine that team plus more rookies. And that's what I mean when I say like I can constantly roll these types of teams forward when I have the draft capital and I implement the type of production struggle that I did. It gives me the flexibility, but it also gives me the continuity, and it continuously extends the life of my team. So my team might not have to go on a rebuild on that side for like 5 years, right? And that's a beautiful thing. But anyways, back to the current team at hand. So those are my running backs. So 5 stud running backs. Let's say like those 5 running backs, I have like 5 of the top 15 running backs, right? So I'm controlling that position pretty handily. And then on the wide receiver front, I have, I have Tyreek Hill. I have Laviska Shenault. I have Juju Smith-Schuster. I have T. Higgins. And then I just added, through the rookie draft, I added Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, De'Ami Brown, and I think those are the only ones I've noted. I also added like Tutu Atwell and Anthony Schwartz, but I don't really expect them to do anything for me. So, and then on the tight end side, I have Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert, Hunter Long, who I added through the rookie draft, and Adam Troutman. So again, you can see a team that is very balanced, very stacked at the key positions of quarterback, running back, with pretty damn good depth at wide receiver and tight end as well. So again, this is another team where I'm expecting to compete year in and year out for the next 4 or 5 years. So another dynasty that was built. And again, that was a 1-year turnaround. But the key is both of those turnarounds happened in 2020 when we had a really, really stacked running back class. I'm not really going to do as much of those this year because 2022 does not project to have that type of impact. Now, I'll do it for a couple just because rookie pick values are still really, really good. But keep in mind, in 2019, I did a bunch of these types of teams, a bunch of these production struggles. I bet big on the 2020 class. Now, if the 2020 class busted, maybe that could have hurt me. But I also traded out and got studs like Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon and stuff like that in a lot of those drafts. So that's why I always talk about the balance, right? So that's another example. I'll give you a more recent example that's happening. Actually, I'll give you one more here. Also kind of did it last year, but I did a lot of trading back in the startup draft and just loaded up on the 2020 rookies. So this is a team that I have now, but I basically left the startup draft. I traded out of my first round pick, and I traded out of my early second and got a late round second and a bunch of third round picks. And this is a 10-team super flex PPR league. But this is the team now. I've got Carson Wentz as my quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Fields. So my quarterback situation is not the greatest, but it doesn't matter because I'll tell you what I have elsewhere. I have basically a monopoly on the 2020 running back class. I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, and Antonio Gibson. So I almost got DeAndre Swift, but someone else sniped him in front of me, so I couldn't get him. And that wide receiver, I got DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, Laviska Shenault, and then I just added Jalen Reagor, and I just added Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, and De'Ami Brown. You'll see I have a lot of that across drafts this season because if I'm drafting the second round, I'm basically auto smashing on a lot of those. And then De'Ami Brown's been an auto pick for me in the late second. So. And then I also added Tylan Wallace and KJ Hamler, Jordan Love. And this team also has 3 2022 firsts, 3 2022 seconds, 2 2023 firsts, and 2 2023 seconds. So I'm just going to keep reloading on that team. And that team is going to be competitive this year. So it might not win this year. I think I have a good shot, though, based on my running backs. But even if it doesn't, once I reload on next year, it's going to be a freaking dominant-ass team, right? So those are a couple teams that I did rebuilds in 2019 or 2020, which I turned around really quickly, either in 2021 or 2020 via the rookie draft or trading. So those are a couple examples of years past. And then the last one is, this is one of the BDG leagues called What I Do Dynasty. Shout out to all the homies on there. Shout out to Brett, Nick, Scott, BDG, John Conyers, all Snacks, Animal, Noah. Everyone's freaking in this league. It's an awesome league that we play in. But we're still doing the rookie draft now. I think we're in the third round right now. But this is a draft where I also punted year one. And I traded back a lot. And then got a bunch of wide receivers. So my wide receivers in this league this is probably the most loaded wide receiver team that I have. But basically, after exiting the draft, I had about 4 first-round picks in 2022. 4 or 5. Might have had 5, actually, first-round picks in 2022. A bunch of second-round picks. I had 4 or 5 or 6 second-round picks. And I basically loaded up, controlled that market. And then I made a couple moves in season. So I traded for Saquon Barkley. Sorry, not in season. Was it in season? Might have been in season. I traded for Saquon Barkley, and I traded for Stephon Diggs in season, even though I wasn't really competing. But I wanted to get a couple of his assets, mainly because I felt like Saquon Barkley was undervalued. He's still my running back 2 and has always been my running back 2. But at some point, I think people started undervaluing him a little bit. So I traded for them. So Saquon Barkley was basically my only running back in this league. And then I have Deshaun Watson, Ryan Tannehill, and I had James Robinson. I traded him away in a combo deal for Joe Burrow because I need a quarterback to extend my team life. But this is one where I had a load of rookie picks, and I used some of them to trade for vets. Like I said, I traded for Stephon Diggs, and I traded for Saquon Barkley. And Brett actually ended up controlling the entire draft. He had 50-60% market share. He ended up collecting all of them. Freaking Ash Ketchum, collect them all. And then basically, when I left the draft, I had a pretty solid team of wide receivers, and that carried through. And then in this rookie draft, I basically replenished at the running back position by trading back and drafting Najee Harris. So let me read you my team as it is now. I made a big trade yesterday. I gave up Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and my 2022 first. So I rarely trade rookie picks in advance, but this is a team where I feel like I'm ready to push all the chips in and go all in this year. But I made a trade for Lamar Jackson and Michael Thomas. I gave up T. Higgins, 2022 first, and Joe Burrow. So the Bengals stack plus my first for Michael Thomas and Lamar Jackson. And so now my team is Lamar Jackson, Ryan Tannehill, Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson was going to play, I probably wouldn't have made that trade at all because I would have felt more safe. But because he isn't, I don't expect him to play at least to make preparations. So Those are my quarterbacks: Lamar Jackson, Ryan Tannehill, Deshaun Watson. My running backs are Saquon Barkley, and I added Najee Harris and Javonte Williams in the draft. So I drafted Najee at 1.03 because I needed that running back. I would have taken Chase, my wide receivers. You'll see why I didn't take Chase. My wide receivers are A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Michael Thomas, Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, Jerry Jeudy, and Marquise Hollywood Brown. So again, I feel like I have basically 6 of the top 10 dynasty wide receivers in this league, which is why I feel like I'm probably going to dominate for a long time. And then my tight ends is probably my weakest spot. All I have is Robert Tonyan, O.J. Howard, and Cole Kmet. But O.J. Howard and Cole Kmet are actually 2 of my favorite top late round dynasty, not dynasty, but late round tight end for this year. I really like Cole Kmet. I think he's going to walk into a decent opportunity share. Not sure what Jimmy Graham's going to do there, but I think he's going to be someone that you can look out for in the red zone, especially now with Justin Fields there boosting that entire offense. I'm a little bit higher on that offense than I was before. So that's my current team. I have plenty of depth to compete. I have plenty of wide receivers in their prime. I have both older guys who are in their prime and younger guys who have yet to hit their prime, who are just going to start dominating the league, like DK, A.J. Brown, and Justin Jefferson. And then I have Stephon Diggs and Michael Thomas on the more experienced side. Like, I feel like 4 of these guys can be the wide receiver 1 overall this year. That's how good I feel about my wide receiver team there. And assuming I fade injury on Barkley and Najee, I think I can probably get by with those 3 running backs. I might try and trade one of the wide receivers for either a tight end or running back in season, because I can only start 4 wide receivers and I have like 6 top 10 wide receivers. So that's a move I'll be looking to make closer to the season, maybe flipping one of those top end guys. Although it kind of just feels good to collect them all, kind of have A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, and Justin Jefferson, who are all 3 of them are in my tier 1 dynasty wide receivers, and the ranking there doesn't really matter. They're all just in the same tier. So it feels good to have them there. But again, I'm trying to win at the end of the day, so that might not be the best for my production at the end of the year. So I might have to try and make a move for one of the top end tight ends at some point. So that's that team. And again, that was a 1-year kind of turnaround. So you can do this, and the reason why I preach this methodology is because I've done it again and again and again, and it works. And you can go all in on the startup draft and push your chips, and I've done that as well, and I have a couple teams that have been dominating there. But the one that I found for that have given me the most sustained success and excellence is by doing the productive struggle. So the reason why I want to cover this today, to pair up with last week's episode, is to give you guys like some insight and some view into what your teams can become. And again, that's just not all from drafting. It's not like I just did the productive struggle, stocked on rookie picks, and then stopped playing, right? I did a lot of trades, a lot of trading in season, a lot of timing the right trades at the right time that have paid off. But that's everybody should be doing that, right? Those are table stakes. But I really do believe that having the productive struggle type of draft that I've done sets you up for that. Now, does that mean you cannot do productive struggles this year? No, not necessarily, because like I said, rookie pick values will be rookie pick values. But I would highly recommend, if you're doing a productive struggle, hopefully you can join a league that allows you to trade picks 2 years in advance. Even if you have to pay those years in advance, I think that is ideal, because what that's going to allow you to do is not only acquire the 2023 picks for about as cheap as they'll ever be, which is right now. And I understand they've probably already gone up a lot, because everyone who follows me or follows Ray or follows Devi, basically anyone who doesn't follow PFF College, because that account is I don't know, man. Their content is just really, really, really bad. If you look at their ranks, it feels like they hired someone that doesn't watch college at all, or just watches college but doesn't have a fucking idea what the hell he's talking about. So unless you're following PFF, if you're following the right folks, you'll know that 2023 class is good. So there's chances that others in your league that follow us as well will know that as well. But it's still going to be cheaper to acquire them now than it is once that class comes. Remember how expensive it was to acquire 2020 picks and how much you can trade them away for? I was trading single top 5 picks for Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon in some leagues, right? That's how valuable those picks were. So it's going to be like that again in 2023. So make your mark now. Start collecting now. If you can get a startup draft, make sure you try and collect those. And those will come cheap, because people will be like, wow, I'm in the startup and I can trade up, I can trade up around and get my guy now for just a first round pick that's 2 years out. They're not thinking about that far in advance, right? And most people are not thinking that far in advance. They should be, but they are not. And if you are tracking this channel and you follow me, hopefully this is a lesson you've learned and been able to take advantage of. The delayed gratification is absolutely worth it. But one thing I do want to say, and this is a fair point that someone brought up on the YouTube and maybe on the Patreon, but I've talked about before as well, is when you do that, you got to make sure you're in a league that's going to last, right? You don't want to like punt and just donate money and then the league folds like a year or two later, right? So you got to make sure you're in a good league, and part of being in a good league is identifying and being with a good commissioner. Like the leagues that I've commissioned, like hopefully are going to last for a long, long time, but I started them 3 years ago and none of them have folded, and some of them like don't even have people leaving. Like I've basically maybe had to replace like one person a year, maybe 2 people a year max this year. But from year 1 to year 2, I didn't have to replace anyone. So it's up to your commissioner to really try and find people that are in for it, right? So instead of just inviting anyone, what you should do as commissioners, what I try to do is I try and get to know the person and, try and understand how many leagues they're in, try and understand what kind of experience they have, right? If I'm recruiting from the Patreon, for example, I'm very much less worried about that because I feel like, they're much more committed as players, but also play with like other people, So I'm in a bunch of analyst leagues. I feel like those people, they have a lot on the line in terms of the reputation, so they don't hopefully just ditch and like, pull a Nick Whalen and just ditch because the team stinks. Like hopefully if you recruit well, the leagues will last. That's one thing. You got to be careful about leagues being in a league that's going to last long enough for you to capitalize on production struggles. So I've been lucky enough where the leagues that I've done this in, they have not folded. But again, I'm very picky about which leagues I join. I don't just join any single league that I'm invited to. 1, because I don't have that kind of time, but 2, because I want to join leagues that are fun, and 3, I want to join leagues that last. So that is the caveat that I will give you. If you are implementing this type of strategy, don't just join like a public league and just like assume it's going to happen. Like maybe it's not as smart then because the league might fold. But assuming you're in a home league with your friends or whatever, and you think that league's going to last, I promise you that this is the optimal strategy for dynasty domination, at least for now, until everyone else adjusts. This is the one that I've had the most success with. Is this the only right one? No, of course not. There's other strategies. There's plenty of ways to win. I know like some other big names talk about trading away your rookie picks to move up and landing studs. I used to think like that when I first started off, but the more I've played, the more experience I've played, and now I've done probably about 25 startups in the last 2 or 3 years. And this is the one that has proven again and again to have success. And the reason why is because like it gives you a much, much larger margin for error. And I've said this before. I'm not that confident in my evaluation skills. Like I think I'm a really good player, and I think I'm confident in myself relative to the field. But on an absolute basis, right? On an absolute player evaluation basis, we all suck. Like we're talking about R squared of 40% when we talk about a lot of the models. People miss every single year. Big names. I don't care who the fuck you are. You're missing on a lot of stuff. So for me, this strategy really kind of allows you to account for that margin of error, right? The margin of error you have is much wider. You have more flexibility. If you fuck up, you can always trade into a future year because you have rookie picks, and those are the most liquid assets of all in fantasy football. So that's kind of where I'm at with the strategy. I just want to show you guys some of my teams that I'm having success. I'm hoping to take home like at least, a championship in like all of those teams because I really feel like they are that dominant. Again, it comes down to luck in the final week, but assuming, I get a little bit of lady luck, those teams are shoo-ins for the playoffs for sure. So I'm not worried about that. And that I just talked about 4 or 5 teams, but you can believe me when I say this, like I have like about 10 teams that look like that. So that's what I want to cover there. And then the last topic I want to talk about is like positional value, which, Farshad brought up. If we look at this year, right, if you look at ADP, you have like 5, 6, sometimes 8 of the top quarterbacks going in the first round of your fantasy football drafts. Now, that's a little bit different from last year. If you guys remember last year, it was the running backs that were going really early. And us at BDGE were like super early on that train. We're like, yo, we need to, like, we value running backs more than quarterbacks and super flex even because, studs like Jonathan Taylor, like DeAndre Swift, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, et cetera, like those are the ones that are going to win you. And you can get value at quarterback later on in the draft through guys like Ryan Tannehill, right? Even like Justin Herbert was a late round value, right? Like you can get some value later on in the draft through some of these guys and while loading up on quarterbacks. Well, now the pendulum has totally shifted back. And the reason why is because we are very reactive as a dynasty community. We are not very proactive, which is why if you are forward thinking, the game becomes a lot easier for you. But everyone saw what quarterbacks did last year, like guys like Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, doing your Patrick Mahomes stuff. But these quarterbacks were scoring incredibly, insanely high. And, the general hive mind right now is like, well, you could not win unless you had a top end quarterback. I don't necessarily agree with that because like I actually won a few of my leagues last year with guys like Ryan Tannehill, right, with guys like Kirk Cousins because I was loaded at running back because I still feel like running back is the position to go. So I've won there, but I do agree that quarterbacks, again, give you a larger margin for error. So what's going to happen is everyone's starting to draft quarterbacks. So my strategy last year of like loading up on quarterbacks is not going to work as well, right? Because it pushes all the quarterback value up. So before, you could get someone like a Kyler Murray in the later round of the first. You could get a Josh Allen in the third. You could get Ryan Tannehill in the fifth or sixth, right? You could get Russell Wilson in the second. You could get Dak in the second maybe. But now you'd have to pay like first round picks for a lot of those guys to land two top quarterbacks. So that doesn't make as much sense because you're going to have to trade up to do it. And then the quarterbacks are not as good as the value that is falling in other positions like running back and wide receiver. So I would not really recommend to go for the all-in quarterback strategy this year. So I'm going to think about how I want to cover that on the strategy guide, on the Big Dogs Draft Guide when it comes to startups. But I would not recommend hoarding of quarterbacks this year just because of how reactive the community has been in pushing quarterback value up. So those elite quarterbacks have been pushed up, but as a result, the other quarterbacks have been dragged up as well, the middle tier ones that have been pulled up. And then the rookies are obviously going to go up. Like I'm telling you right now, Trey Lance is going to probably be a first-round startup pick or at the very worst, an early second-round startup pick. And you just cannot stack quarterbacks at that cost because that means you have to trade up to do it. And if you trade up to do it, it's not going to be worth it when you're trying to trade out later. Okay, so that is one massive adjustment. And I don't really expect the quarterbacks to do exactly what they did last year this season because if you look at what happened last season, it was a very unique circumstance, right? I talked about it going into the season. I said, look, I think we're going to get pretty explosive offenses and we're going to get a lot of production from quarterbacks and wide receivers because of the shortened season, like no training camp, no off season, right, because of COVID and all that stuff. So defenses weren't going to be prepared. The last time we saw that was with the NFL strike, like the shortened season, like way back in the day. And that was the most comparable situation. Now this year, I think, the NFL is a lot more prepared for COVID. We have vaccines going on, all that stuff. So it's going to be a lot less predictable. Now, some players are opting out, but there's other players that actually like still going to training camp. So I think it's going to be a bit of a middle ground between a normal season and a COVID season. But I do think that defenses are going to adjust. They're going to have more time to prepare. And we're not going to see the high-flying numbers from quarterbacks we saw last season. So those that are drafting really high quarterbacks this season are not really going to see the rewards because, one, because of that, but two, we're just not very good at predicting quarterback seasonal end finishes. We're good at doing game-to-game finishes because of predicting game script and offensive flow and games played and all that, but we have just not been very good at predicting how quarterbacks finish, right? Like last year, Lamar Jackson was a consensus quarterback 2, Patrick Mahomes consensus quarterback 1, neither of them finished there, right? So there's just a lot of variability in quarterbacks, and that's why I don't really like going so heavy in quarterbacks early on because you're putting all your chips in a bag that has a lot of variance that we're not very good at predicting, right? So what I think this season, and comboed with some of my comments from earlier about predictive struggle, this might be a pretty good year to kind of go for the championship in year one because you're going to get in situations where you can land a CMC and a like Alvin Kamara or like a Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara with their first and second round picks, right? And if you're in a league that's like everyone's trying to trade back and you can't get value, I think that's a pretty damn good open, right? You could not have gotten that in years past. In years past, there's no chance you could have got a CMC and Alvin Kamara because all of them would have been like top 8 picks, right? You would have to trade up to do that. But you can do that this year without trading up because of how many quarterbacks are going in the first round, right? People are going to take Lamar Jackson. They're going to take Patrick Mahomes. They're going to take Josh Allen, who's been going like top 5 pick, pretty consensus. And they're going to take Justin Herbert, who's going to be top 5 pick, pretty consensus. They're going to take just Trevor Lawrence. They're probably going to take like Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. Like you're going to talk about 8 quarterbacks going off in the first round, right? So that means if you're picking from the late part of the first, mid to late part of the first, you're going to get a chance at a stud like CMC and Saquon Barkley. Probably Saquon Barkley, who's been disrespected way, way, way beyond what is understandable for me. But then you can wrap around on the turn and grab another stud running back. So you can open running back, and have potentially 2 top 5 running backs and then fill out wide receiver and quarterback later and get some of the value at quarterback like a Ryan Tannehill. I'm totally comfortable, again, putting Ryan Tannehill as my quarterback 1. He'll probably get that low-end QB1 finish, right? And then I'll backfill with a couple of rookies. And Trey Lance is probably out of the question, but I think Justin Fields is someone I'm going to be targeting in startup draft. So something like a Ryan Tannehill plus a Justin Fields plus like a Matt Ryan or Tom Brady later, that's a perfect quarterback grouping that can support you to the championship if you go running back, and then grab value at wide receiver in those middle rounds as well. So, like, I think this is a very, very good season. So to answer your question, for Shad, about what we should be doing, I think it's a nice season to kind of pivot and not go all in on productive struggle builds, which are really effective. I'd probably go back more heavy on that next season, and then this year mix in some of the basically win now strategies. And that doesn't mean you have to like unload all your rookie picks right now just to trade up. That's not what I mean. You can do that. The reason why I'm in for a win now strategy this year is because you can do that without giving up all your rookie picks, without trading up in the draft. You can get stud running backs, and that's just something that we haven't seen very much of in years past. So that's how I would tackle it this year in terms of how we've shifted from the pendulum has swung way too far, in my opinion, of going all in on quarterbacks. And if you see my ranks, you'll see a lot of those quarterbacks ranked highly, right? But I'm ranking them there because I want you to understand where market value is, what you can get for them, if you're trading for them. That's what I'm accounting for. But I wouldn't necessarily like just pull the trigger and draft all of them, right? Like, I'm fine if you want to take like one of them early on, but I wouldn't just like load up on quarterbacks early this year. I just feel like the opportunity cost of doing it is too high, and you're giving up too much value at the skilled positions, particularly running back, to do so. All right, so that's all I got for you guys this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. A couple of other announcements I want to talk about. So we got some feedback in the YouTube comments. So this is how you guys know I'm always in the comments. That said, basically, we like dropped the ball a little bit because we don't have as much content and wanted like more short form content. So we hear you. I think the last couple of weeks have been pretty crazy for Noah and myself. But, now that Noah is done the rookie profiles, we are going to tag team back a couple of short form videos. So I think what we're going to start doing is a little bit like a versus video where Noah and I discuss a topic or a player, and we kind of just present quick hitting big facts from ourselves and why we like or dislike a player, and kind of just engage in that debate. So that would be a very short form, like 10 to 15 minute video. And then we are probably going to bring back the narrative. So for those of you guys that like the narrative, we're going to bring that back because it's another short form video. So we're going to be adding a couple pieces of short form video. And again, Noah, myself, the FB God, are going to be tag teaming back for a couple more videos on the channel. So hopefully you guys are in for that and down for that. We'll probably be starting that up next week. And then also shout out to the BDG editing team. We had a meeting last week, so we're getting some support on that front. So Sexy Pats is going to be helping me edit some of my Market Watch Monday videos. So shout out to him. We're going to be thinking about working in some graphics, and you'll see how we kind of develop these videos. I want to constantly try and improve. So big shout out to him, and thank you for him for taking that on and partnering up with me to kind of provide you guys the best content that we can. All right. So that's all the announcements I have for you for now. And hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, hit the alert so you know when I'm dropping vids, when Noah's dropping hot vids for you guys in the upcoming off season, as you prepare for your startup drafts, as you prepare to build dynasties to dominate your leagues for years to come. All right. That's all I got for you. Until next week, I'm out. Peace.